Hey friends, welcome to another Daily Dub, a recap with Dub on tonight's episode of Game of Thrones, Season 8, Episode 4, only 2 more to go. I do not know the title of this episode yet, I haven't looked it up. The episode just ended about 15 minutes ago. I just kind of processed my notes and my thoughts around it. It was kind of an emotional ending. And a very strong episode. They've been so good this season, and a lot happened. Almost an hour and a half episode. I think the last two are both going to be about the same length, 80 minutes, and a lot to happen. So let's go through a recap, and then we'll kind of go through my thoughts as I do it. So we start off with the funeral scene. You get a really nice kind of final scene for Jorah with Daenerys and with Theon, with Sansa. You get to process the emotions from the Battle at Winterfell. You get a really good speech from Jon Snow. Lighting of the bodies, Lyanna Mormont again. You see Ed, Beric. You see all the folks that died in the last episode. They're honored, and I think that's very good, both just for the characters, for the actors too. Especially people like Jorah and Theon that we've been with since like the very first episode, I think. So that was good. Those were very good scenes, great acting. The speech by Jon was great. And then it kind of transitions, and we get into like the revelry of the post-battle dinner, right? Like the champions celebration. So, I used to coach, play sports. You win the state championship, you go out and you have a good time with your team and with the parents and the families. And everybody's having a good time. And, so they're at like the Golden Corral, doing it up at the buffet. And you can see Daenerys is trying to earn favor. She's trying to do some political machinations because she realizes that the North don't like her, and she needs them to like her. So she legitimizes Gendry and gives him his father's lands. That was really cool. Gendry's been a good character, and we'll come back to that. But you can also see the others at the table, at the head table, a little skeptical of what she's doing. And then you get a scene like Tyrion. He's drinking a lot. He's walking around, and he's just talking to people. Tyrion is kind of our eyes in this part. He's catching us up. He's spending time talking to Bran. He's just talks to the Hound, I think. Just talking to different people and walking around the party. Hound ain't having it. He's still not really recovered. And he basically just says he has one thing left to do. He tells Sansa that later, and we all believe that's going to go kill the Mountain. You get all of the guys surrounding Jon Tormund and the Wildlings and the Northernmen, and hip hip hooray, 3 cheers for Jon Snow. He rides the dragon, the crazy man. Let's all take a shot. I think there's one scene where Sansa's like, I believe in you, Jon, I believe in you, like trying to get him to chug a beer or a wine or whatever, and he's like, vomiting is not celebrating. I thought that was a funny line. But what is important about this is Daenerys is sitting at the head table, and she sees how the soldiers appreciate Jon, and they hold him up. And she remembers that her people did that in Essos, but she can't command that in Westeros. She's not getting it in the North. And in the back of her mind, she's also thinking about Jon as Aegon Targaryen. He has a legitimate claim to the throne. What does this mean for me? It's a driving factor through this. You get the scene where Tyrion and Jaime and Pod and Brienne are basically playing Never Have I Ever, having a drinking game, and it's funny, a lot of funny stuff, and they're getting pretty drunk. And then Tyrion rather, says basically, you're a virgin to Brienne. This distresses her. She gets up and walks away. Tormund shows up, and it's not the time for kind of Tormund's overt mannerisms, and Jaime steps up and kind of shushes him away, and he goes after Brienne. Tormund is then distraught because, even the hot guy from the south came and took the girls up here too. And then he's made nice with another lady who's not scared of his wildliness. And, so he goes to holler at her. You got a nice moment with Sansa and the Hound. And I think this is where Hound says he only has one thing that he cares about anymore. And he says to Sansa, little bird, if you had just left with me at King's Landing, none of that would happen to you with Ramsay and with Littlefinger and all those horrible things that happened to you, they wouldn't have happened. And very good speech from Sansa where she basically says, if those things wouldn't have happened to me, I'd still be that little bird. I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be able to do what I am to do. And that's a good lesson, right? Like, all of us are built by our circumstances. This show really capitalizes on that. All of the leading characters, all of them, have been through horrible things. Whether you like the characters or not, they've had a really challenging thing. And, early on in Game of Thrones, a lot of these girls were going through terrible, terrible things. But now they are strong and leaders, and I think it's very well written, and, should make you kind of think about it. Like, you are who you are today because of the things you went through. We heard that last week with Bran talking to Theon as well. Everything you've been through brought you exactly here where you're supposed to be. So I liked that moment. We get the moment where Gendry goes to Arya and he kisses her and he asks her to marry him and be his lady because now he's a lord. And Arya kisses him back and says, anyone would be lucky to be your lady, but I am no lady. And as we see later, Arya doesn't seem to be interested in much of anything except finishing her list. And so she, it's sad for Gendry. But Arya was never going to be a lady in a castle. That's just not her. We've known that all along. So then you get to Jaime going in Brienne, and it doesn't look like Brienne was actually drinking. Jaime was drinking. He's pretty drunk. He starts to take off his shirt. She takes off her shirt. And you know what happens. And we get the moment that a lot of people have wanted with Jaime and Brienne. And that was good. That was good for them. Because, it would kind of be what would happen. Like, if it was ever going to happen, the aftermath of near death would be when it was going to happen. Then we get kind of the same scene with Jon and Daenerys, except it gets interrupted, and they finally have a bigger conversation about him and who he really is. And he's saying, I've been many years the queen, and she's saying, you can't tell anyone who you are. That's the only way it'll work. If you tell anyone, they will only serve and worship you, and they'll make a claim for you. And the North will always hate me. And he says, I need it. They're my family. I had to tell my family. I can't lie to my family. And you got this dynamic, and he says, I will always serve you. We can all live together. And she gets very cold to him and says, I told you how it could happen. She wants him to not tell anyone because she's scared of him as a throne. We're really getting toward what seems to be kind of a three-way setup with Cersei and Dany and Jon. That's where it seems to be with only 2 episodes remaining. I don't love that because Daenerys has been one of probably my very favorite characters in anything ever, surpassing Bilbo. But these last, her story arc right now is makes her into a potential villain or anti-hero, and I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't like how she seems to be like her father. I hope that she can turn it around very much. So, let's see. Then the next scene is they're planning the battle, and we're going to go to King's Landing. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, all the different plans. Sansa's like, hey, why don't we, just chill for a bit, because we just fought this big battle against all these 1 million ice guys, and people are hurt, the dragons need to recover, let's just rest. And Dany basically says, I brought my troops up here to fight for you, now I want your troops to fight for me, and you're telling me no. And Jon, of course, says, our troops will fight for their queen, and we'll march south to King's Landing. This leads to Arya saying we need to have a Stark intervention. So Arya and Bran and Sansa and Jon go outside, and they're basically having an intervention with him. Like, Jon, you're crazy. She's crazy. What are we doing? How can we trust her? This is no good. And Bran basically looks at Jon and says, it's up to you. And Jon decides to have Bran tell them who he really is. We don't see it. It happens off camera. But they now know that Jon is a Targaryen. Interesting about that, we start to get a series of farewells. So you've got Tyrion and Jaime, and Jaime's basically saying, I'm staying here, I'm going to stay with Brienne. Brienne has to stay with Sansa because she's sworn to protect Sansa. Sansa's not leaving the North. They're talking, then Bronn shows up. I was terrified. I was really worried that Bronn was going to kill Tyrion right there. Bronn says, hey, Cersei hired me to kill you, but it doesn't do me any good if Cersei's dead. And I think that Daenerys is going to win. But what are you going to give me? Tyrion says, remember I said I'd double anything that she ever would give you. And so he demands that Tyrion double it, which, because he's being offered a castle. he says, well, what's better than that castle? And they promise High Garden. And Jaime doesn't like it. They're fighting, but eventually that's what they promise. Very weird scene. I was worried Bronn was going to do it. I don't know how Bronn snuck in there. How does he get into Winterfell? But I guess the defenses are down right now, and he snuck right back out. I guess we're just supposed to assume he's stealthy. We certainly haven't seen the last of him. Kind of a weird scene, but I'm glad he didn't kill Tyrion. I thought Tyrion was going to die a lot from that point forward. We continue on our farewell tour. We have Tyrion going to talk to Sansa and say farewell and say, I really wish you'd mend the fences with Dany. And then it seems like Sansa told Tyrion about Jon, but it happened off camera. We didn't see it. We have the Hound. He's going to King's Landing by himself. Then we see Arya. She's going by herself. They decide to ride together. We get our favorite buddy cop of Arya and the Hound. And they both basically say, I don't plan on coming back. And we know that for Arya, that's the list. She wants to kill Cersei. And for Hound, that's to go kill his brother, the Mountain. So they're separate from everyone else marching south. Keep that in mind. We get a bunch of farewells with Jon, Tormund, and Jon. Tormund saying, I'm going to take the wildlings. We're going to go back north. We're going to leave. Jon tells him to take Ghost. I don't understand. Then we get the farewell with Jon and Sam and Gilly. It looks like Gilly's pregnant. And I think they're staying at Winterfell. I don't know that Sam would want to go up into the wildling areas. These farewells didn't feel completely real, but maybe. I just can't see that being the last time we ever see Tormund. I can't see that being the case. But maybe. But that was a nice farewell. The stuff with Ghost, I wish we didn't know that it was so expensive to film the direwolves, and it's hard to film the direwolves and the dragons for the budget. Because it would feel it just feels like they go, oh, Ghost, you go with Tormund up in the north where you belong. Because we don't want to animate you. I don't like that. Like, that's just the way it felt. Like, Ghost, the direwolves are so important until the dragons get big. And then they're just kind of nothing. Like, we haven't seen Nymeria. Are we ever going to see Nymeria and her pack again? I guess Ghost could show back up. But then you get the little scene with Jon and Ghost, and it's sad. I don't know that we've seen the last of them. But I didn't love that scene. It just feels kind of stuck in there to get rid of him. At least until the end. So then the next thing that happens is Tyrion and Varys are on the boat, the fleet. So Dany and her army is on their boats, and it looks like they're going to Dragonstone. And Jon is leading the northern allied armies on foot to King's Landing. And so Tyrion and Varys are in one of the ships, and they're basically talking about treason. Is Jon... Well, we're not to the treason part yet, but Tyrion tells Varys about Jon, is the way I'm interpreting that. I don't think they already knew. I think the Starks knew. Sansa told Tyrion. Tyrion told Varys. That seems to be what happened. And they're discussing what to do about Jon, and would he be a better king, and etc. How many people know, etc. So anyway, the fleet is going toward Dragonstone, and Euron Greyjoy's fleet ambushes them. The dragons are up in the sky. He has all those bolts, the dragon killer crossbow things. And devastatingly, they shoot Rhaegal many times and kill Rhaegal. Rhaegal falls into the sea, showing again the power of those dragon crossbows. Dany looks bloodlust and starts to fly toward them, but then has to retreat at the last second so the Drogon doesn't die, fortunately. They turn the bolts and they fire on the fleet, destroying a bunch of the boats, and they take Missandei prisoner. This was bad. This was bad. Stupid Euron Greyjoy. This was bad. I will note that Varys does mention that Yara Greyjoy has reclaimed the Iron Islands for Daenerys, and that the Dornish army has sworn to Daenerys as well. Those are just important because we need to know where the other allies might be in the event of things. So, I'm very disappointed that Rhaegal is dead. Euron comes back to King's Landing. He's very proud of himself. He's, ha 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 ha, Cersei. Cersei's happy with him. Cersei says, you will rule the seas, I will rule the land, and our child will rule everything one day. And, of course, it's what we talked about earlier, that it seems like she's going to say that her child with Jaime is Euron's probably going to piss Jaime off quite a bit, I would think. But we'll see. And you see that Missandei's been taken and she's in chains. Daenerys basically says, let's just go burn it all down. Let's kill them all. Let's burn it down. Cersei's plot is she's brought all the citizens inside the Red Keep, where she is, basically using them to protect her. She's using human shields to protect her. So in order to kill Cersei, she has to kill all these innocent people. And that's a hard thing for a queen to do. So, but Dany wants to just go burn it down. Varys basically says, you're crazy. You can't do this. Tyrion says, why don't we ask for her surrender? Eventually, Dany agrees to that, but not in a very good way. The next scene is Tyrion and Varys basically saying, Varys saying, what about Jon? Maybe he should be king, right? Like, this isn't going to work. Like, she's going crazy. Again, I don't like where that's headed. But that's definitely where it's headed. So, they're talking about treason and what have you. We go back to Winterfell. So, when we saw Cersei with Euron, that's the first time we'd seen King's Landing in like 3 hours of show. We had been at Winterfell the whole time, so it's kind of startling to be in King's Landing. Then we go back to Winterfell. News comes to Sansa of what's happened, that the dragon's dead. She tells Brienne. They tell Jaime, and Jaime decides he has to leave. And a very heartbreaking scene where Brienne is begging him to stay, saying, you're a good man, you don't have to go be a part of that. And Jaime basically saying, I'm not a good man. Here's all the horrible things I've done for Cersei. And just heartbreaking. Gwendolyn Christie, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, they were wonderful in that scene. Gwendolyn Christie was amazing. And just rips your heart out. And Jaime on his own seems to set south for King's Landing. Then we go back to King's Landing. We've got a small assembly with Daenerys. You've got Cersei and all of her people on top of the walls. Tyrion and Qyburn meet. Tyrion's basically saying Cersei should surrender. Let's not kill all these people. Qyburn is Qyburn. Tyrion walks back. He looks up at Cersei and says, do this for your child. You've always loved your children. You can see he hits the note with Cersei. She's certainly emotional. Lena Headey, great, as always. Dinklage as well. Fantastic facial acting from Emilia Clarke and Lena Headey in this without any words, while Dinklage is kind of the dialogue. All three very good. And you can see he strikes a nerve with Cersei, but then basically she looks at Missandei, says, if you have any last words, now's the time. Of course she says Dracarys, meaning Daenerys is burned to the ground. And the Mountain beheads Missandei in another heartbreaking death. And Emilia Clarke, Dany, turns around. She's marching back toward her army with one of the most cold and ruthless faces ever. And that's how the episode ends. And I sense that episode 5 is going to now be the battle for King's Landing. And I mentioned the way the people were going. So we've got Daenerys' army with the Unsullied. I don't think the Dothraki are with them. I think it's just the Unsullied are there. They're at King's Landing. Looks like they're going to go back to Dragonstone and figure out what to do. You've got Jon and the Northern Allied armies, and maybe the Dothraki. I'm not sure if the Dothraki are with Dany or not, but that army on south on land. You got Hound and Arya moving south on land separate than them. You've got Jaime moving south on land separate than them. You got Bronn that I don't know where he is. Then beyond King's Landing, you've got the Iron Islands, the Greyjoy fleet with Yara, and you've got the Dornish army. So they're kind of already surrounded at King's Landing. I think this is going to be a pretty epic war at the same scale as what we got last week. I'll tell you, I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I do not know what I think is going to happen. I thought Tyrion was going to die several times. I really hope that we can get resolution with the Daenerys and Jon plot, and they can be allied and unified against Cersei and kill evil Cersei. I still think Jaime's going to kill Cersei. I think that's what he left Brienne to do. He went to go kill Cersei. He didn't leave Brienne to go be with Cersei. He knows he has to kill her, and it may be a murder-suicide type situation for Jaime to kind of end his story. I'm not sure. I think we're going to get a lot of deaths. Grey Worm, of course, is going to be devastated with Missandei's death. He's going to be bloodlust. Dany's going to be bloodlust. You've got Tormund and the Northern Army that's separate. You've got the Winterfell Army that's separate. They could come to help. It seems like the army matching to King's Landing is going to be outmatched, especially with now only Drogon. And on the walls, they had all those arrows pointing up. So I don't know how Drogon attacks. Really, it does not look good for our friends, for the good guys. So that was a wonderful episode. A lot of emotional punches early. A lot of fun with the celebration of the big war. And then moving toward the seemingly final plot. I will think that episode 5 next week will conclude the Cersei saga, and I think episode 6 will deal with the Jon Daenerys tension. That's my prediction. Cersei dies next week. They defeat King's Landing, and the final episode is dealing with Aegon Targaryen and Daenerys Targaryen. That'd be my prediction. But this was a wonderful episode. The season's been great. It's sad it's coming to an end. I'm really enjoying. We've had a month now. While looking forward to this every week, and we've got 2 more weeks. So let me know what you thought of the episode. If you have any theories. Again, I don't have a great theory, other than I just think that's what's going to happen. I think Jaime kills Cersei. That Varys plotline is interesting. Is Tyrion begging him not to kill Dany? Could Dany die? If Drogon dies, then is there a need for Dany? I don't know. So, anyway, that's your Daily Dub. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll get a trailer on Wednesday. And new Dub Life coming up on Sunday. I'm headed off to California. Hope you have a good week. Squeeze it.